Well, like everybody else, we have been focused like a laser on the Chinese coronavirus and, more importantly, the reaction to it by Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump. But we've started to wonder, where is the Conservative Party? I think it's a time for putting certain partisan things aside and showing some unity. This is a nonpartisan problem. But we saw Justin Trudeau try and make a move the other day to seize spending powers that have nothing to do with the virus, but everything to do with getting more power, especially for his minority government. We saw the same thing in the United States, where Nancy Pelosi tried to salt the Coronavirus Recovery Act down there. It has a different name, with all sorts of hobby horses and perks that have nothing to do with the matters at hand. So there is advantage being taken by advantage takers. In Canada, we need a Conservative opposition, and I have to tell you, I have seen very little of it, which brings me to the subject of the Conservative Party's leadership contest. The party has really been on cruise control for the last 6 months or so, but there is an election afoot for the party's next leader. We've interviewed several of the candidates so far. Both Peter MacKay and Erin O'Toole have told our reporters that they would sit for interviews. Neither has done so. But one of the candidates who has done an interview with us and who has raised the required $300,000 entry fee, as well as the requisite 3,000 signatures, is Jim Karahalios, a man I personally interviewed several weeks ago. But now news comes that he has been disqualified, thrown out of the race by a secret committee of party insiders and a secret complaint. He joins me now via Skype. Jim, nice to see you again.
Hey, Ezra. Thanks for having me back a couple weeks later. Not what I expected, but here we are. Another day, another scandal in Conservative politics.
Well, I enjoyed our conversation. I thought you had strong points of view, many of which I agree with. But the whole point is, let the party members choose amongst the candidates. You met their fundraising criteria, their signature criteria. You've been a long-time party activist. No one would doubt you're a Conservative. Why were you disqualified?
Well, when I was on your show, we were talking about stopping the Red Tory coronation of Erin O'Toole and Peter MacKay. And shortly after being on your show, I did the media rounds that day. Donations started picking up at an accelerated pace. The support started coming in. Every day our numbers were growing more and more. And Erin O'Toole was the front runner in that race at that time. The mainstream media likes to say it's Peter MacKay, but us in the party know that Erin O'Toole was leading. And I was obviously a threat to that. I was clearly emerging as the option to stop the Red Tory coronation, the best credible candidate. And they had hoped that I wasn't going to raise the $300,000. Erin O'Toole's team on social media said he'll never raise that $300,000. He can't do it. And of course, we did it. And on the same day that I announced that with the money online that we received in donations and the money we had in hand in checks and the money that was in transit at party headquarters, a secret cabal of 4 or 5 people decided that I shouldn't be in the race anymore. Without identifying a rule that I broke, without them having the authority under the rules to do so, they decided, we don't want this guy in the race. And it's pretty clear to anyone following that the reason is because I was a threat to the 2 establishment candidates, and especially Erin O'Toole, who was trying to run as a blue Tory in this race, trying to get votes on the right of center side of the party. And he was losing ground in that area to me.
All right. You've said a lot of things here that I have heard, which is why we invited you on the show. But can you tell me what primary evidence or actual documents or actual letters you received? So you're saying an internal cabal of a handful of people kicked you out, and your interpretation is it's because you're a threat to those candidates. That's your interpretation, but what kicked you out? What did they say? What was the form of it? Who signed the letter to you telling you that? Like, give me some hard facts underneath it. How did you learn you were disqualified? I went to the party's website and I saw you removed from it. but surely you received some phone call or email or letter?
So I can tell you that the matter today, my lawyer has requested from the court an urgent hearing to get to the bottom of, to get in front of a judge to rule on this.
Okay, let's come back to that in a minute because that's very interesting. But tell me, how did you learn you were disqualified? Was it a phone call? Was it an email?
So I want to get into the step-by-step details, but for the last 2 weeks, where I got cut off by party headquarters for the last week and a bit before the announcement. But the final decision came in the form of an email, a general email inbox or outbox saying that the Dispute Resolution Appeals Committee, no one's name was attached to the message, and it just said, you've been disqualified, and it didn't even say a rule that I had broken.
Okay, so you said there was a Dispute Resolution Appeals Committee. Is that what you called it? And who is on that? Do we know who's on that?
They've never been publicly listed.
Really? Okay, so appeal suggested there was a decision that was then appealed. So what was the original decision? Who made that?
So the original, there was a complaint. The original thing was a fine issued by the CRO, of which I appealed the fine to an appeals committee. And the appeals committee, I guess, decided to take a more draconian step and say, well, he's disqualified.
Okay,
and in the
fine for what? A fine for what?
Apparently communications I made earlier this month that they disagreed with. I took a position. Yeah, go ahead.
So, no, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Keep going.
No, it's okay, Ezra. Well, I was on your show and I talked about some of the policies that I've been talking about and some of the concerns I had about Erin O'Toole and Peter MacKay and the people on their teams. I made it very clear. I was talking about drill, build pipelines. I was talking about getting out of the Paris Accord. And I was talking about the people aligning themselves with Erin O'Toole and how they've behaved running political parties, especially the Ontario PC party. Erin O'Toole's campaign chair and I have been political rivals. I sent out a communication where I addressed some of the butting of heads that we've had in the past that led the Ontario PC party at the time to suing me in a lawsuit that I won when a judge tossed it out. And the other thing I identified in that communication piece was in 2007, he had advocated for Sharia banking in the Globe and Mail.
Okay, you're talking about Waleed Solomon, who is Erin O'Toole's campaign chairman, who is also very senior, really Patrick Brown's closest ally when he was premier. So let me ask you this. Was that, and I will put up on the screen now, the email you sent out. I read that email, and it cited Tariq Fatah and an article he wrote about Sharia law, and it seemed well-sourced, and it actually didn't even seem that incendiary. You're just saying, here's what Waleed Solomon said, I don't know, more than 10 years ago, but you asked questions about that. I didn't find the email particularly aggressive, frankly. If there was anything defamatory, I'm sure Waleed Solomon, who's a senior member of a senior law firm, would have sued you, and I presume he hasn't.
Right.
So what did they?
I never even got a libel notice.
Well, I mean, and I don't think you would have, based on my own reading of the letter. Who complained? Did Solomon himself complain? Like, I'm just trying to get some facts out here. You had a complaint against you for which you were originally fined. When you appealed it, you were thrown out of the party. Did you ever see the complaint against you? Let's start there.
So I think there's something important, and I'll get to who filed the complaint. That email, everything I put out in the campaign is well-sourced, well-referenced. I always provide links. If I mail something out, I provide the original documentation. And yes, it was a news article published over 10 years ago, but the reason it was relevant is because 6 months ago or so, Tariq Fatah wrote about a case in the courts where a couple of individuals got acquitted from criminal charges, and I want to fix that. That was my position.
Listen, I'm not worried about it. When I mentioned it was 10 years old, I'm just saying, you know, these are fairly well-known facts. Right. And even if they were wrong, you don't disqualify a candidate for having the wrong opinion or getting a fact wrong. I was just trying to understand what the complaint was about and who filed it.
So the funny thing is, they had this communication, the Erin O'Toole campaign initially filed the complaint, and they had the communication for a week and a half to 2 weeks before they filed it, because I had sent it out earlier, And the weekend that, or the Monday that they filed the complaint, and I received it the next day on the Tuesday, so 2 weeks ago, just coincidentally happened to transpire with the same weekend that I hit the $150,000 threshold to move up to second
you're
tier
talking,
status.
I mean, I understand the timing and why you feel that's interesting, but I'm trying to confirm, and I think I have, but let me double check. So it was the actual Aaron O'Toole campaign that filed the complaint. Did anyone sign the complaint? Was it O'Toole himself? Was it Solomon himself? And are you confirming for me that it was about your email and Sharia law?
2 members of his campaign team signed it.
Who? What are their
going
names?
through the courts. Well, I don't have the document right in front of me, so I'll get that to you. But it was 2 senior people of his campaign team that signed it. It wasn't Aaron himself, but it was from the campaign team that launched the original investigation. Was
Walid Solomon one of them?
No, it was not.
Okay. Well, I suppose it's interesting enough who signed them, but that it came from the campaign is really what I was getting at. And it was about that email you sent. Is that correct?
That's right.
Well, okay. So thank you for confirming the basic facts there. Even if you were wrong, and I don't think you were wrong because I read the email, even if you were irrelevant or mean, and again, I don't think you were, but that's a matter of opinion, why does the party's appeals committee have the power to cancel a candidate for a mean email? I don't think it was mean, and I don't think it was false. But even if it was both of those things, who is the party bureaucrats to just say, no, you're out of the race? I mean, if this happened to Bernie Sanders versus Joe Biden, if some Democratic Party senior cabal said, Bernie Sanders, you got your facts wrong and you were too mean to Biden, you're just not allowed to run anymore, goodbye. That would be an outrage. Right. How does this happen in the Conservative Party?
Well, you're hitting on a couple of things. Number one, that appeals committee, under the rules that I signed up for, and that's a contract, they don't actually have the power to disqualify me from the race. And secondly, any contravention of punishment or fine that they want to impose has to be for breaking the rules. And they couldn't cite a rule that I broke.
Yeah, I can imagine if
they simply just disagreed with the communication.
Yeah, if you're overspending, or if you raised your money inappropriately, or if your signatures were in the wrong place or weren't enough, or if you used party lists inappropriately, I can imagine there's a bunch of real rules that candidates have to follow. But what you say ideologically, politically, even personally within those rules, that's not a breaking of the rule, and that's not for some committee to resolve. Isn't that the contest that all party members ought to be able to vote for at the end of the day? And let's say again that you're completely wrong on everything. Isn't that for the party grassroots to decide?
That's what I thought, and it's especially funny because 2 days after I think the complaint gets filed, Aaron O'Toole sends out an email that he's going to fight Sharia law because it's a threat to Canadian democracy. I didn't even go that far with such inflammatory language in my communications. He went even farther, but somehow my communications were so offensive. Look, the whole thing, Ezra, what we're getting at here, it was staged outrage. It was orchestrated outrage on the Twitterverse, where they then went on a 2-week campaign to defame me and slander me and suggest that I said bigoted things. Well,
but like I say, even if that's true, who cares? Let the people choose. So you're actually the second candidate who was disqualified by this mysterious committee, aren't you? I can't remember the first fellow's name. He was from Quebec, DeCarry, I think was his name. And he said something about gay marriage. And again, you could agree with him or disagree with him, but who the hell is it for the party to decide instead of party? I don't know how many party members there are. I'd be surprised if it's 100,000 these days. But why should that 100,000 not have the choice?
But I agree, and there's a couple differences. I know this is getting in the weeds. Richard DeCarry was declined as a candidate early in the process, and that's questionable. I said that wasn't appropriate. Let the members decide. He got his 1,000 signatures. I actually was accepted. Like, they interviewed me, They vetted me, they accepted me. I raised the $300,000, which they said I wouldn't be able to do. Our signatures are upward 4,000 or 5,000 at this point, over 2,000 donors. And because they disagreed with a communication, first they tried to slam me in the media by calling me a bigot when I never said anything bigoted. That didn't work, and they were hoping that I wouldn't raise the 300 grand in the next 2 weeks after they made the outrage. So they took the extra step where this appeals committee at the very end, the same week that I hit the 300, they disqualify me. So
just out of curiosity, what was the fine that you appealed to the appeals committee? How big was that fine?
So it was a $100,000 penalty, $50,000 fine, and an increase in my deposit of $50,000 with 7 days to go in the campaign, where they knew, the party has access to my online donations. They know what I'm raising on a daily basis. So they obviously knew I wasn't going to be able to raise that in 7 days, and it was a de facto disqualification. And I got my lawyer. We appealed it, thinking, they'll reduce the fine, or they'll issue me a warning, or they'll say whatever. Even if they wanted to take the draconian step and say, you can't talk about that topic. You can't talk about a campaign.
And who the hell are they to even say that? I tell you,
okay. I agree, Ezra, but
you mentioned lawyers because, I don't know the state of election law in Canada because the huge new Elections Act, I'm trapped in part of it. Trudeau's coming for me because I wrote a book about him. I think that's unconstitutional. I have not read the minutia of the Election Act as it pertains to party leaderships. I don't know if that's governed by the Election Act or if that's considered a private entity's business. Do you, or does your lawyer think you have a legal leg to stand on to appeal? Now, there's another question of whether the courts will accept an appeal during this coronavirus business. But do your lawyers think you have a case?
So there's two important things to cover. There's one on the Election Act whether it governs party leaderships, and then there's the finances. So I want to cover both because they're really, really important. On the first one, nothing in the Election Act controls the process for a party leadership in terms of voting and the ballots and who gets in and who gets out. That's all internal party politics. But when they accept my $25,000 application fee and I sign a contract to enter the race and they say, here are the rules, there is enough case law out there that says the courts won't do a judicial review of a decision of an internal party organization or any kind of internal organization like a political party. But those documents are contract.
Right.
There's thousands of members who buy memberships, $15. They sign up to the party constitution and the rules. And the people with positions in the party, leadership candidates, people on appeals committees, the National Council, everyone is bonded by those rules through contract. And you can't just decide one day, I don't like the suit Jim is wearing. Jim's lost a little bit more hair in this leadership race. He's not my kind of candidate. And let's just make up a reason to throw him out. You got to abide by your own rules, especially when they're the ones that wrote the rules.
Yeah.
I didn't even write them. I agreed to follow them. So that's
and I remember from our earlier conversation, you've had legal battles with the Ontario PCs. If I were the Conservative Party of Canada, the federal PCs, I would be quite wary of tangling with you on the matter of party operations, because you're not. This isn't your first rodeo, as they say. Well, let me ask you this: we have gotten into the weeds, but I think it was. What's that?
It is one man against the machine, Ezra. The Ontario PC Party came after me first with a lawsuit. And this is the position you get put in as an individual candidate against the machine when the machine tries to stamp you out. And that's your only recourse. Sorry.
What's so interesting is Neil MacDonald, the CBC journalist, who's always been a bit of a gadfly himself, and I give him credit. He's always been a free speechnik. Even he tweeted the other day that you are an important part of the Conservative coalition and party members ought to have a chance to say yes or no to you either way. I mean, I don't understand how a party that did not have enough votes to win last time thinks it can grow by cutting out social conservatives with DeCarey. And I'd call you a general conservative, maybe a conservative on Islamic issues like Sharia law, conservative on carbon tax. I don't know how the party that couldn't win against Trudeau in 2019 thinks it can win next time by shrinking its coalition. I just don't even get it. And if Neil MacDonald of the CBC can see that, I don't know why the party can't. Last question for you. Is there any chance in your mind that the party will reverse course on this? Frankly, I think it would be in Peter MacKay's interest to have you in the race because you would split Erin O'Toole's Conservative vote. That's my own, Kremlinology on it, but maybe that's being too clever by half. Do you think the party members, other leadership candidates, other MPs might say, what are you guys doing? If he's so bad, let the members say so. Don't take this judgment away from them.
Well, can we unpack a couple of things that you said there? First, if Erin O'Toole and his campaign team can't take a little criticism from me and a leadership, I don't know how they think they're going to beat the Liberals and all the aggressive or dirty tactics they're going to do in a general election if they can't handle my criticism. Number two, I was hoping last Sunday night, I didn't spend the weekend crying in a church basement or screaming. I was talking to my lawyer and my team, and we were thinking what we're going to do. And I gave National Council a last chance to fix this because they're the elected body of the party that appoints people. And when a couple of councillors tried to bring it up on the call on Sunday night, they were told it's out of order. You can't even talk about it. No motion allowed. So we're left here on Tuesday with the last step of trying to get to court. And with the coronavirus going on, courts are limiting what they're going to take in as cases at this time. So it's an urgent appeal. So I don't know. I'm hoping the party National Council, there's about 20 of them, I think, will, give their heads a shake and say this is outrageous and ridiculous. The other important thing, you talked about election laws. The election laws do govern one thing, and that's the finances of a campaign. And right now, the party is holding $320,000 of contributions that were earmarked for my campaign. And obviously, my campaign has run up expenses. And what I've heard from the party, even immediately after they disqualified me by Saturday, is they were saying, we're not giving him any of the money. So now they want to force me offside with the Elections Act and leave me with debt that I can't pay because the Election Finances Act says the candidate can't pay it out of his own pocket. And so I don't know what they're doing over there. It's a kangaroo court and a kangaroo system that a handful of people think that they can decide for 100, 200,000 members of the party. I'm hoping that something will smarten up or shake out here this week because I worked really hard and thousands of people across the country want to see me on the ballot. And if what I said and some people are saying he's a fringe candidate, he's not going to make it on the ballot, he's not a threat. Okay, then let me get crushed in the campaign. You're obviously scared that I can win and I can beat Erin and Peter, and that's why they don't want me on the ballot. Yeah,
it's so weird. I mean, if you are as marginal, or if DeCarey is as marginal as is said, why not prove it? In fact, that would be the ultimate proof that the party is not like you, as opposed to having some secret ejection seat button pushed. We're going to reach out to MacKay and O'Toole again. I'm very skeptical that they'll come on the show, especially to talk about this. We'll also reach out to the party. It's still Andrew Scheer's party, and I think he's more afraid of talking to the Rebel than he is to the CBC, so that I'm going to take a wild guess that he won't answer this, but we'll reach out to them. I think it's demoralizing, not just for your own supporters who will surely be turned off, but for people who say, let there be a healthy and robust campaign. I just don't get the idea. If you want to hand select a candidate, then say so. If you want to have a Democratic vote, then say so and do so. But saying one thing and doing another, I think it's a turnoff for Conservative voters, and it's wasting time and energy and focus for a party that has nothing to waste right now. Jim, thanks for taking the time to joining us today.
Thanks, Ezra, and we're going to keep pushing, keep fighting, and moving forward to stop the Red Tory coronation. So thanks for checking in.
All right, we'll keep in touch with you on that. Well, there you have it, Jim Karahalios. I liked a lot of what he said when I interviewed him a few weeks ago, but even if I didn't, you don't throw a guy out with some secret meeting because some other candidate didn't like his communications. What a weird place the federal Conservatives are in. How depressing. That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.